Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be talking about the Gina Carano interview with the Daily Wire, as I am a Daily Wire subscriber, and so I actually got early access to her Sunday interview with Ben Shapiro, and there were a lot of things that were quite enlightening. A lot of them have already been broken by Deadline. We have an article here from John F. Trent of Bounding into Comics, which also covers that Deadline article and also gives a little bit of history as to all of the things that happened in this certain situation. But there was one line as I was listening to this interview that really struck me, and it was what she had to say about one of her co-stars in Pedro Pascal. And all of us know Pedro Pascal, right? He has labeled people that he does not like as Nazis. He has gone out of his way to just vitriolically just totally condemn an entire group of people. And of course, he is still very much employed by Lucasfilm and has not even been corrected, at least from all the things that we know. Before diving into what she had to say about him, and also other things about this specific story, please be sure to smash the like button, but most especially, please watch over on Odyssey. Odyssey is a really cool platform that is growing every day, it seems. Obviously, we mentioned this on Friday Night Tights last night, that Jeremy talked to young Ripa and was essentially very much convinced to really start to move over to this platform, that believes that there's a big future in this platform. And so obviously I have also been over on this platform for a while now, and it is really awesome. So shout out to the 653 followers that I have over there. But if you've not followed my videos over there yet, please consider to do so, because as you all know, YouTube believes in cancel culture. All the big tech companies believe in cancel culture. And so they will just strip off any person, anybody that has wrongthink, that does not fall in line with their political ideologies. And as you all know, I try and strive to be as independent as I possibly can be. And when we talk about these issues, especially as they relate to the entertainment industry, it is incredibly important, I think. And so if you want to continue to support my work, follow me over on Odyssey, and also check out other links in the description as far as social media links where you can follow me on Minds.com, over on Gab, and of course other places where you can help to support the channel. So as this article from John F. Trent points out, Gina Carano in this interview with Ben Shapiro does indeed call out Disney, does call out Lucasfilm, and labels them as bullying, as bullies, and even admits that there are other cases, that she is not the first time, she is not the first case of Disney bullying their actors, bullying the people working behind the scenes. And I think that this is something that, one, is not that much of a surprise, because based on how they treated Gina Carano, it does not seem all that surprising to hear that they would treat other people just as poorly for not having quote-unquote right think. But I think the most compelling thing, the thing that really got me in the entire interview, was when Gina Carano was talking about Pedro Pascal. Because as you all know, I've been very critical of Pedro Pascal. I find that a lot of the things that he has said are reprehensible and are just downright disgusting. And it makes no sense, I mean, obviously, unless you understand the politics, about why there's this double standard where Pedro Pascal literally called groups of people a certain name, and Gina Carano doesn't call anyone any names, but rather is in this more politically centrist personality type, and yet get canceled because she does not embrace the full woke left ideology, right? She does not embrace the pronouns and the bio mindset. She does not go out of her way to try and kowtow to every single thing the far left does. And so because of that, not because she's a Republican or a conservative, but because she's just in the middle and doesn't buy into the ideology, they of course had to cancel her. But even though Pedro Pascal has bought into this, what did Gina Carano have to say about Pedro Pascal? That's right. She says, "I find him to be a beautiful soul." She talks about how they obviously had disagreements. They obviously realized that they couldn't talk about certain things. But at the end of the day, he and she seem to get along, and she says about him that he is a beautiful soul. Now, do I think that Pedro Pascal would say the same thing about her in public on social media? Not really. I honestly don't believe that, because he is obviously a very corporate guy, right? Not only does he have the far left ideology that they love so much, but also he would never do anything to buck the company line, right? He would never do anything to make it look like the company made a bad decision or went after someone on, not rightfully. And so I don't think he would ever say that in public. But the fact that she, in an interview, which again will be public tomorrow, right now it's only available to early, it's only available early right now to people who are actually Daily Wire subscribers, and it's an incredible interview. It's about an hour long, and even though that is the case, it's again going to be public tomorrow, so you'll be able to hear it for yourself. It'll be available on YouTube and other social media platforms as well. But the fact that she proves herself to be just an incredible human being by saying that. Again, someone who I find reprehensible in Pedro Pascal, she calls a beautiful soul, essentially a beautiful human being. I just find that so compelling. And to me, it just makes it that much more frustrating as to why and how someone like Gina Carano could actually be canceled. The other major thing that you get from this entire interview as you're listening to it is just how much of a beautiful soul she is. She's literally not trashing anybody by name. She is being incredible. I mean, the big thing is that she shows pure emotion throughout the entire interview. You can just hear it in her voice. You can see it in her face that she has been so pained by what has happened with this. She didn't want to say screw you to Disney. She didn't want to leave the people that she was working with behind. She obviously had a lot of fun with the people that she worked with. She obviously had a lot of really good relationships with the people that she worked with. And that's why it's so sad on multiple levels. Not only that, of course, that Disney has let her go in this sense, but also that no one, because of their own fear, and she mentions this, right? There are people who hold either similar views or who are very supportive of her, but can't say anything because they are terrified. They are terrified that they will lose their job. Now, I know many of us can be critical of them to say, no, you should not be afraid. Speak out, as the Daily Wire and Gina Carano have shown. You cannot be canceled unless you let them cancel you. There is a new path. There is a way forward. But if you think about it from a career perspective, I can totally see and understand why there are so many people who would say, why would I want to put my life, why would I want to put my career, maybe even my family, at risk by possibly getting fired for standing up to someone? And again, I think that this is something that only Gina Carano can decide for herself as far as whether or not these people are worthy of her friendship, of worthy of her care. But it seems to me, and you really get this throughout the entire interview, that the heart on Gina Carano is so big that I honestly do feel like she is probably going to still be friends with some of these people, even though many of them have not actually publicly given her any support or any notice whatsoever, because that's just the kind of person that she is. And I think that especially as more and more people watch the interview, right, not just reading the clips that you got from Deadline or that you even have here from Bounding Into Comics, but actually get to see and hear her speak these words herself and many of the other things, especially what she has to say about Pedro Pascal, that I think more and more people hopefully will realize just how stupid Disney was for doing this. Right? It wasn't like they fired an ideologue. It's not like they fired a hardcore conservative Republican. They fired someone who has one of the biggest hearts in the world, who hates bullies, right? That's a big thing that she says throughout this. She just hates people who are bullies. It's one of the reasons why she says she got into fights when she was younger, because she would again fight against bullying in all forms and fashion. Obviously, that had some influence, too, on her getting into the MMA earlier in her career and earlier in her life. And so you understand that because she hates bullying, the fact that even with that, she still has such a tremendous heart, the fact that she still has such an emotional connection. Again, everything about this interview, in my opinion, is just complete and utter emotion, right? You hear the hurt in her voice. She is hurt by the fact that people that she worked with and that people that she thought, appreciated her and she thought there was this mutual respect. The fact that she found out that many of them don't actually have that level of respect for her, I think it is a tremendously hurtful thing. The fact that there are people online who are trying to cancel her and trying to destroy her life, right? These are things that emotionally are scarring her. And she's already said that she's had days, crying. She's been shaking for days too. And I think that some people would look to that and say, oh, well, maybe it's just an act, etc. But when you actually, I think, listen to her, it really just does come across as very genuine and from a very good place. If she had gone and said, I'm going to go ahead and burn every bridge, I'm going to call out Pedro Pascal, I'm going to call out all these people by name, and the fact that she doesn't do it. In fact, she at one point talks about Jon Favreau and how Jon Favreau kind of rubbed off on her in the way that Jon Favreau is apparently a very quiet-minded person, is someone it's very gentle. Like the word she uses for Jon Favreau was actually gentle. Like the fact that she's still talking about these people, even though many of them either were a part of her firing or at the very least never defended her. And she does mention that she knows there were people that went to bat for her, but she can't say whom because obviously they themselves would probably also get attacked by the mob. And I think that as someone like her who's been attacked by the mob, she knows what it's like. And so we can argue day and night about, okay, but people should stand up for her and people should stand up to the mob. But if you've actually, many of us who say that have never actually been attacked by the mob. None of us have ever been attempted to be canceled the way that Gina Carano was. And so since she knows this, right? She knows that she would never throw under the bus people that she genuinely cares for, and the fact that some of them actually went to bat for her, genuinely care for her as well. She would never want them to go through that from her own words, right? Through her own attempt to try and destroy the company that has screwed her over in this capacity, and it's really just treated her so poorly, right? She would not want to burn the bridges of friends, people that are still acquaintances of hers. And so I find that just very commendable. And I find that so very important, right? The message that she sends in this interview, I think is so very important, because it's not only about standing your ground. It's not only about standing up to bullies. It's not only about, being true to yourself, but it's also, I think, about this sense of respect, right? This sense of love and respect that we have since, in a lot of ways, lost in our world, and in a lot of ways lost, especially with the dawning of social media, right? It becomes very easy for us to become tribalized. It becomes very easy for us to pile up on people, right? To attack people. Again, I've been guilty of this myself. And so once again, Gina Carano just shows herself to be an inspirational person, right? Regardless of what you think about her from a career perspective, from an acting perspective, from a fighting perspective, I think that if you really honestly get all of that nonsense, right? All of these opinions out of the way, what you're left with is just a raw, genuinely nice person who in many ways has been wronged. And the fact that the media continues to try and spin this narrative, the fact that the media continues to try and skew the narrative is insane. That's why I recommend to anyone who has any doubts about the authenticity of her, watch the interview. Right? Watch the interview with her, because it's not going to be an hour-long session of, oh, I'm going to, bash Disney. I'm going to bash all these people. So it's not that kind of interview. Instead, it's a real person. And that's why I love these kind of long-form interviews, because it shows you that these people are real. These people are human beings. These people have emotions. These people are therefore, as humans, worthy of dignity and respect. Right? Even if we disagree with someone, right, vehemently disagree with someone, we can't ever forget the humanity of the person that is there. And I think that that's something that's just so very important that Gina Carano has pointed out here. But I do want to talk about just a couple other things, since we do have actual quotes from this interview, of course, just as a bit of a recap for those that may not be aware. Gina Carano worked on The Mandalorian as Cara Dune, has been a very popular character, especially among hardcore Star Wars fans who have been very much disaffected with Star Wars, right? Disaffected with Disney's take on Star Wars. A lot of us were coming back. A lot of us were really liking the direction The Mandalorian was going, and a big part of that was Gina Carano's take on Cara Dune, right? A very badass character as such, and it was a very cool thing to see. She, of course, has been very vocal about being critical of things like the mask mandates and the lockdowns, right? Which is amazing how that's now been labeled as a Republican conservative talking point, even though I know many people from all different sides who hold to that point of view, right? It's actually a very apolitical point of view in that way. And so the thing that got her in the biggest trouble in this sense, right, kind of the last nail in the coffin, as it were, as far as her relationship with Lucasfilm, was this image that she shared right here, which the main point of it was, it says at the very end, right, how is any of this different, right? How is it any different from how people were treated back in the 1930s and 40s in Germany, right? The culture that built eventually to the destruction of an entire race of people. How is that any different from what's going on today? And about how people are being canceled and people are being demonized just because they have a political point of view. And if you don't believe that this has any validity to it, look at Gina Carano. She literally got fired. She literally got removed from her position. And a lot of people are saying she wasn't actually fired. They just didn't re-up her contract. Okay, what else would you call it when you were in a show for 2 seasons and every indication is that you will be in season 3 and then they don't re-up your contract? That is essentially the same thing as being fired. I mean, come on, let's just be honest here. In the interview, they make the point to say that she was fired. And again, I think they clarify a lot of things. She talks about this very thing, and she talks about where it comes from. And the thing that's always frustrated me about this and about this story is that they always mention saying, oh, she said that it's the same, that the way that Jews were treated back in the 1930s and 40s, that it's the same as the way Republicans and conservatives are being treated today. Here's the post. The word Republican, the word conservative is never actually here, is never actually mentioned. And Gina Carano reiterates that once again, right? She's just so saddened that so many people have lied and distorted this story to fit their narrative, right? To get those clicks, to get all of those things. And it's not true. It's blatantly not true, right? There was a troll on Friday Night Tights who's a troll every single week who literally was just putting out the same talking points that have been debunked several times over. And again, here is the post. The word Republican, Democrat, nowhere actually mentioned here. Nowhere mentioned any political party. It just says any political view that is canceled, right? Any political view that is made to be demonized in any way, because this can happen from the right to the left as well, right? There are people out there, and again, I've been guilty of this too, right, where we almost demonize and dehumanize someone because they're a leftist, because they have maybe a more liberal mindset, right, on certain issues. But this is the reason why Gina Carano was so important in Hollywood, because she was this middle ground. She was like, no, I'm just speaking for common sense stuff. I'm not speaking from a right or left perspective. I'm just speaking from my own perspective, right? From Gina's perspective. And she's just speaking truth to power, right? She's just speaking about things that are commonsensical that the vast majority of people agree with and understand, but for some reason we're afraid to say. And yet she was, of course, fired for that. So some of the things that she said here, obviously she has this was a part of the press release there. So let me see if I can get to the actual interview. It says here, in excerpts obtained from the show released to Deadline, Carano states, quote, "I've been through so much and I've seen so much now clearly of the bullying that takes place, and I saw it before. I'm not the only one that's ever been bullied by this company, and I know that so deeply. I could share a story which would turn things around in the media, but I can't because it would sell out a friend. Everyone is afraid of losing their job." And I think that is a great point, right? It's not her responsibility to burn the bridge of a friend. Probably someone that stood up for her, someone that's been supportive of her even now, continues to be so. I would say, I think that whoever this friend is, I think that person should stand up. I think that person should kind of, share that story too and say, hey, let's talk about this, right? Let's expose what Disney's actually doing. Because remember that a lot of this stuff started to come out, right? A lot of this started to shift the story away from what we were talking about earlier with the Uyghur Muslim camps, right? Remember that Disney has supported the paramilitary group that's responsible for the death of Uyghur Muslim populations in China. Remember that they've worked with the Chinese Communist Party and gotten money from the Chinese Communist Party and have been supportive of China's Communist Party by working with them in that direct way. What's the best way for us to kind of, deviate from that story, to try and push things away from it? Let's try and cancel Gina Carano for not even being a far-right Republican, but just being human and having a political thought that is not matched with the crazy leftist ideology that pervades Hollywood and, of course, all of Lucasfilm. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Some of the other things she says, you know how boxers headhunt sometimes and forget to go for the body? I feel like Disney or Lucasfilm or whoever it is, just certain people at the company, I feel like I've been headhunted and you can feel it. All the fans of Cara Dune were just outraged. They were like, why didn't you add the character? Why didn't you take the character off? So this is about how she kind of saw the writing on the wall because there was a previous employee of Lucasfilm who basically removed her from a poster. And so she talked about how a lot of people were asking, why would you remove her from the poster? It's almost like they were laying the groundwork to show what they felt about her. And, just a kind of last minute thing before ending the video, she does go into, indeed, kind of like the behind the scenes stuff, what was going on. She does reveal that she found out she was fired through social media. They didn't even have the grace to reach out to her saying, hey, we're not going to continue with your character. We're not going to continue on in this direction because of this or that. Instead, they just up and fired her. And then from the previous segment, they talk about, of course, the beep bop boop situation and how essentially they tried to force her to apologize. They tried to force her, and this is another thing that got me, they tried to force her to reach out via Zoom. At one point via Zoom to talk to 40 members of the LGBT community. At one time, they tried to force her to do that. And her mindset was, no, that's ridiculous. How about instead I meet with 4 or 5 of them and I take them out for dinner and I can talk to them face to face, eye to eye, and actually have those conversations. And she makes it very clear, right? She is not in any way anti-trans, right? For her, it's not about that, right? The whole beep bop boop thing was all about calling out the Twitter mob. The same Twitter mob that got her fired, the same Twitter mob that for some reason has this almost infinite power and control in Hollywood to the point of them being able to get almost anyone canceled for any reason. So, with that being said, this interview is so powerful. It just shows you how much of a beautiful soul Gina Carano actually is, and I highly recommend it. Again, it will be available tomorrow, Sunday, February 21st. And I highly recommend anyone watching. And it'll be available on YouTube. I assume it'll be on either Ben Shapiro's channel or the Daily Wire's channel. If you have a Daily Wire subscription, it is already available. So you may have already got a notification for that. It says part 1 of 1, and I think it's just a 1-part interview, but it's about an hour or so, a little over an hour long. And it was fantastic. Again, it really just, I think, honestly showcases just how much of a beautiful soul Gina Carano is. And it just makes it even that much more reprehensible that Disney would get rid of her for seemingly no reason, especially since she continues to be the same beautiful soul that she was beforehand. And as you all know, she is a fighter. She's not going to give up. And I continue to wish her, and of course the Daily Wire, now working with her, luck in their future endeavors. She talks also a little bit about her future movie projects and what kind of movies she wants to make. And let me just put it this way. The 2 movies that were mentioned by both Ben Shapiro and Gina Carano were the movies Drive and Baby Driver. And if you know anything about those films, they're both fantastic for very different reasons. And if we can expect anything even similar to that, where it's not just an action film, but an action film with a brain, we have a lot to be excited about in the future of this partnership. But anyway, what are your thoughts about this? Have you, maybe you're a Daily Wire subscriber, have you actually listened to the interview? Let me know your thoughts about the interview in the comment section below. Also, of course, if you have not, do you plan to listen to this interview, and what are your thoughts in general about what she has shared so far? Again, the fact that she has, going back to the main point, the title of the video, the fact that she calls Pedro Pascal a beautiful soul, I think just shows you the kind of person that she is, and I feel like she is setting a great role model standard for all of us, both, you know, from young to old, to look up to. As far as how to talk to each other and talk about each other. But anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Again, please check me out over on Odyssey. I also upload these over to minds.com directly. So if you want to have some alt platforms that are not YouTube, feel free to check those out. Anyway, you guys are all amazing. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members: Albertus Magnus, Ali C83, Andrew Hoyle, Animation Commentator, Brian P, Dion, Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, The Honky Chonky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jay, Jeff Toon, Jonathan Carney, Laura Story, the Modern Major General, Mag Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Riff Magos, Rosetta Ullin, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Benden, Tina Bojan, and Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Thank you so very much for being my Patreon members. And a huge shout out also to my Subscribe Star members: Stan 4, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, Darkstar 57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nevadan G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for being my Subscribe Star members, and to all people who support the channel. It really does mean a lot. If you want to support the channel and have your name shouted out, please make sure that you join on Patreon or Subscribe Star today. If you sign up at the $5 or up level, you also get access to exclusive giveaways, including for 4K and Blu-ray titles. At the $10 level, you get all of that, plus you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. There's actually currently an episode that I made public on the channel right now, so you can go ahead and check that out. If you want to have more access to even more episodes and more content and the ability to ask us questions, please feel free to check that out as well. And if you join at the $25 level and up, the Chosen of Valhalla level, you get to have all of those things, plus you get a free t-shirt that first month that you sign up for it, and every month you will be able to access the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where me and my Chosen just talk for about 2, 3, sometimes even 4 hours about whatever it is that they want to talk about. So check all of that out in the links in the description below. You are all amazing and beautiful people. We all have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.